Caribbean Nights. The sleep story of pirates and lost souls. Chapter 1. The Sea Before Dreams. The night sea of the Caribbean lies vast and endless. It breathes slowly, like a giant creature asleep beneath the moon. The waves roll with a gentle rhythm, steady, soft, and almost human, as if whispering the stories of all who had once sailed upon it. Centuries ago, before the name Caribbean was even whispered by sailors from distant lands, this ocean was already alive with the voices of storms, of ships creaking against salt and time, of men who had traded their souls for freedom. The sky then was clearer than it is now. The stars hung low and bright, guiding ships that crossed from Spain to the Indies. Yet the same stars that watched kings and merchants also watched men who were nameless. Deserters, dreamers, outlaws, and ghosts. They would one day be called pirates. The Caribbean was not merely a place on a map. It was a world between worlds, a chain of islands scattered like broken pearls across a deep blue mirror. Each island carried a different story. Some smelled of sugar and rum, others of gunpowder and blood. To the east, the winds blew from Africa, bringing whispers of another continent, of enslaved men and women forced into ships bound for these same islands. To the west, the promise of gold from New Spain shimmered. Between them flowed the ocean, the restless stage where all destinies met. And into this world came men who did not belong anywhere. They had no home, no king, no law. Only the sea. They slept under torn sails, drank water sweetened with rum, and lived by a code older than any empire. Some called them monsters. Others called them free. But when the wind turned cold and the lanterns flickered on deck, they called themselves nothing at all. They simply sailed. The night belonged to them. Imagine the stillness of that ocean centuries ago. The air heavy with salt, the soft hum of insects from distant coasts, the stars mirrored in the water so perfectly that sailors often couldn't tell where the heavens ended and the sea began. It was in that stillness that the first dreams of piracy were born, not as crimes but as whispers of rebellion. The Caribbean was a place built on greed and conquest. The Spanish had claimed it, then the English, the French, the Dutch. Empires clashed not only for land but for sugar, gold, and human lives. Ships sailed heavy with treasure and misery, and for every fleet that left Europe there were always men who broke away, who decided that the sea itself was wealth enough. They hid among the cays and coves of islands like Tortuga, New Providence, and Hispaniola. They built fires in the dark and patched their sails with stolen cloth. And in the orange light of dusk they spoke of freedom the way others spoke of God. But freedom was never gentle. The Caribbean winds carried storms that could swallow entire fleets. A single wave could break a man's bones, a fever could kill half a crew, and betrayal could come from the hand that shared your bread. To be a pirate was to live one heartbeat away from death, and yet to embrace it, laughing. When the Spanish galleons passed through the Windward Passage or the Florida Straits, they glittered like moving palaces. Their holds overflowed with gold, silver, and silk, tribute from the New World to the Old. From the shadows of small, nimble sloops, Pirates watched them like wolves watching a fat stag. And when the wind turned right, they struck. Gunfire shattered the silence. The sea turned red for a moment, then blue again. And by dawn, only wreckage floated. To those who lived on land, pirates were demons, men who had sold their souls to the sea. But on nights like this, when the air was thick and still, one could almost imagine hearing their songs drift faintly over the waves. They were not songs of greed, but of longing. Because beneath the plunder and violence, there was always something else, a desire to escape the cages of civilization, to be swallowed whole by the horizon. They did not chase treasure alone, they chased absence, the absence of rules, of kings, of everything that told a man who he must be. And the sea accepted them all. Saint and sinner, soldier and slave, rich and ruined, it made no distinction. Under the same moonlight, every man became small. Every ship a drifting dream. So when you close your eyes tonight and listen to the sound of distant water, remember that the same sound once filled the ears of those who chose to vanish into legend, the ones who traded their names for wind and salt, the ones who drifted toward eternity, their lanterns flickering like dying stars. This is their story, a story of men and women who became myths, a story of oceans that remember everything, a story that begins, as all sleep stories should, with the rhythm of the tide and the slow breathing of the world before dreams. Chapter 2: The Islands of Empire and Storm. Morning breaks slowly over the Caribbean. The sun rises not with fire but with warmth, a pale gold brushing against the restless blue. The ocean sighs beneath it, like a giant waking from uneasy dreams. And in that light, the islands appear. Green, jeweled, and infinite. They look peaceful from afar, but the peace is only a disguise. For these islands, scattered across the tropics, were once the heart of the world's fiercest greed. Each shore carried the flag of an empire, Spanish, English, French, Dutch, fluttering above forts of stone and cannons. From Havana to Port Royal, from Cartagena to Nassau, the Caribbean became a chessboard, and men were the pieces. Empires drew invisible lines across waters that had no patience for maps. The Spanish came first, carving their claim upon the sea. They called it Las Antillas, the gateway to their golden America. Galleons left the ports of Veracruz and Cartagena, heavy with gold, silver, and emeralds bound for Seville. Each voyage glittered with promise and with danger. For as soon as Spain filled its ships, the world's wolves began to stir. England, France, and the Netherlands wanted their share, but not through peace. They unleashed a new breed of men, the privateers. Privateers were pirates with permission. A letter, sealed with a king's crest, granted them the right to plunder enemy ships in the name of their country. To the monarch, it was war by another name. To the men on the sea, it was freedom disguised as loyalty. At first, the privateers hunted Spanish treasure fleets openly. Sir Francis Drake himself, hero to England, thief to Spain, once attacked the great port of Nombre de Dios, seizing mountains of silver. He was knighted for his crimes, his name forever written into history. But after every war ends, the men who fought it are left behind. When peace came, the letters of marque expired, but the hunger did not. And so the same men kept sailing, now without the king's blessing. They became outlaws, buccaneers, the storm-born sons of the Caribbean. The word buccaneer comes from the French boucanier, hunters who smoked meat on wooden frames called boucans in the wilds of Hispaniola and Tortuga. They were loners at first, men cast away from society, living off the land. But in time, these hunters turned to the sea, their rifles replaced by cutlasses. The Spanish called them devils, the French called them brothers, and the sea called them home. The geography of the Caribbean shaped their fate. It was a maze of over 7,000 islands and countless hidden coves. Some were ringed with coral reefs, perfect to ambush slower, heavier ships. Others had freshwater springs and small villages where rum could be traded for silence. The buccaneers knew every current, every secret channel, every wind that carried the smell of approaching sails. Tortuga, the Turtle Island, became their first haven. There, ships flying different flags anchored side by side. Englishmen, Frenchmen, Africans, and runaway sailors from Spain, all bound by one unspoken oath, to live by the sea and die by it. The nights were filled with music and gunfire, with drunken laughter and whispered plots. By day, the buccaneers repaired their ships, melted stolen silver into crude bars, and carved strange symbols into the palm trees as if marking their own claim upon eternity. Farther south, Jamaica rose as another pirate stronghold. The port of Port Royal was once called the wickedest city on earth. It was a place where rum never stopped flowing, where priests blessed men who carried pistols, and where every tavern smelled of sweat and salt and dreams that had already died. Here, fortunes were made and lost in a night. Ships were bought with blood money, and men were judged not by their birth, but by the number of scars on their hands. The Caribbean, once an Eden, had become an empire of storms. Tropical tempests could strike without warning, tearing masts, swallowing fleets whole, scattering survivors onto unknown shores. But to pirates, storms were not enemies. They were accomplices. In the chaos of wind and wave, a galleon's defenses crumbled. Lightning in their eyes was just another weapon of the sea. Empires sent fleets to crush them. The Spanish built fortresses of coral stone. The English established patrols. But for every pirate caught, two more appeared from the mist. They were men of the margins, former sailors unpaid by their masters, runaway slaves seeking vengeance, and desperate farmers who found more justice in the ocean than on land. The Caribbean became their refuge, not because it was kind, but because it was cruel to everyone equally. There is a rhythm to the sea, and these men learned to move with it. When the trade winds blew steady, they struck along the shipping lanes. When the rains came, they hid in the green shadows of the islands. When the moon was full, they sang, not for joy, but to remind themselves that they were still alive. Some say the Caribbean has memory, that when you walk along its beaches today, the sand hides more than seashells. It hides the footprints of men who lived outside of time, men who saw the world as nothing but horizon and who refused to kneel before any crown. They were not saints. They murdered, burned, and took. Yet they also shared, voted, and built a code of brotherhood unknown to the kingdoms that cursed them. Their ships were floating democracies, crude, violent, but strangely just. In an age of kings, they were men of no master. The empires thought they could tame the Caribbean, but the sea obeys no empire. Its winds tore flags as easily as sails, and as each wave struck the shore, it whispered the same quiet truth: nothing built on greed can last. The islands stand still, even now, silent witnesses to the rise and ruin of those who once believed they could own the sea. Palm trees grow where fortresses once stood. Fishermen cast their nets where galleons once bled gold, and sometimes in the half-light before dawn, the tide carries something strange, an old coin, a fragment of a mast, or a whisper of a song no one remembers. The Caribbean keeps its secrets well. But if you listen long enough, if you let your breathing match the tide, you may hear it, the faint echo of laughter, of cannon fire, of the endless pursuit of freedom in a world ruled by storm. And so the islands remain, half paradise, half graveyard, a theatre where the wind itself once played both hero and villain, a place where empire met rebellion and the sea chose no side. Chapter 3. Buccaneers, hunters turned wolves of the sea. Long before they were feared, they were forgotten. Long before they carried pistols and cutlasses, they carried muskets and knives, walking barefoot through the wilds of Hispaniola, hunting wild cattle beneath a merciless sun. They were called Buccaneers by the French, from the word boucan, the wooden rack used to smoke meat over open fires. These men lived alone, or in small brotherhoods, surviving on what the island gave them. They were wanderers without home, rebels without cause, shadows beneath the palm trees. They tanned hides and smoked meat, selling their goods to passing ships. They lived simply: rum, tobacco, fire, and salt. But life in the colonies was never simple for long. The Spanish, who claimed nearly every island for themselves, began to drive these hunters out. They burned their camps, seized their meat, and left them with nothing but rage. That rage, fed by rum and the scent of the sea, became the spark that turned men into buccaneers. Driven to the coast, the hunters found ships, small, fast, made for fishing or trade. They patched the sails, loaded their muskets, and set out upon the same waters that had once delivered their enemies gold. They did not call it piracy at first. They called it survival. And so the hunters became sailors, the Buccaneers became buccaneers. They were not the grand romantic pirates of legend. They were raw, wild, and cruelly practical. They wore leather hardened by the sun, hats of animal hide, and belts lined with knives. Their faces were burned dark, their hands rough with rope and salt. They smelled of smoke, blood, and seaweed. They spoke a strange mix of languages: French, English, Dutch, and the rough Creole of the islands. Their flags changed with their fortunes, but their code was always the same. No prey, no pay. Every man on a buccaneer ship shared equally in both the risk and reward. If a man lost an arm, he received extra silver. If he lost an eye, he received a pension. If the captain failed in courage, he could be voted out. On the open sea, equality was not an idea. It was law written in blood and necessity. Their gatherings were legendary. When they anchored at Tortuga or Port Royal, the nights became a storm of laughter and chaos. Rum flowed like rivers, and the sound of flutes and drums echoed across the coves. They danced with the same abandon they fought with, wild, unrestrained, alive. But behind that wildness was something deeper, a quiet defiance. Each man had been cast out by a world that had no place for him, and so they built their own. Buccaneers became the unwanted sons of empire. France armed them when convenient, then disowned them. England used them as pawns, then hanged them when peace returned. The Spanish hunted them relentlessly, but the sea protected them. For every buccaneer captured, 2 rose in his place, drawn by the same hunger for vengeance and freedom. Their attacks were brutal and swift. They knew the currents better than the navy, and their ships could turn where galleons could not. They sailed without warning, appearing from mist and disappearing into it again. In 1654, a Frenchman named François Leclerc, known as Jambe de Bois or Wooden Leg, led one of the first great buccaneer raids. With a fleet of small ships, he struck Santiago de Cuba, burning the town and seizing its silver. The Spanish called him a devil. The Buccaneers called him a legend. Others followed, men like Christopher Mings, Roche Brasiliano and Henry Morgan, names that carried both fear and fascination. Morgan especially became the face of buccaneering itself. He began as a privateer under England's flag, attacking Spanish ports during the Wars of Empire. But peace did not tame him. In 1671, he led a daring assault on Panama, a city thought impossible to take. He crossed the jungle with a ragged army of buccaneers, fought for days, and captured it. The riches were immense, the destruction absolute. Panama burned, and with it, the last illusion that the buccaneers were mere tools of kings. After that, the line between hero and criminal vanished. Morgan returned to Jamaica rich beyond imagining. England knighted him, Sir Henry Morgan, but the buccaneers he left behind were not given knighthood. They were given gallows. Still they carried on. Tortuga's harbours filled with ships flying skulls and crosses, suns and moons, banners of men who no longer pretended to serve anyone. They attacked Havana, Maracaibo, Cartagena. The Spanish began calling the Caribbean La Mar de los Ladrones, the Sea of Thieves. Yet even as they plundered, a strange order ruled their chaos. They followed written articles signed before every voyage. They shared food, ammunition, and even clothes. And though their lives were short, their sense of brotherhood was fierce. Many crews were mixed, white, black, mulatto, and indigenous men side by side, long before such equality was dreamed of on land. At sea, skin mattered less than courage. A man was judged by how he fought, how he steered, and how he kept his word. There was cruelty, yes, horrific and unending, but there was also democracy born from desperation. In a world ruled by kings, the buccaneers lived by vote. The Caribbean by then had become a wild republic of ghosts. Empires sent governors, priests, and hangmen, but the sea paid them no heed. Storms erased maps faster than men could draw them. The jungles swallowed forts, and the reefs tore apart even the proudest ships. And amid all of it, the buccaneers sailed on, ragged, sunburned, fearless. They lived fast and most died young. Some were buried in unmarked graves beneath the mangroves, others were left to the sharks, their bodies sinking slowly into the blue silence. But none of them died, forgotten. For every tale told in a tavern, every ghost ship whispered of in storms, bore the echo of their laughter. If you listen, you can still feel them. In the way the wind rattles an old sail, in the distant thunder over an empty horizon, in the soft sound of oars dipping into black water, unseen. They were not born heroes. They were born hungry, and in that hunger they found a strange kind of immortality, not in stone, but in salt, legend, and song. The Buccaneers had become wolves of the sea, and the sea, in turn, had become their kingdom, vast, lawless, and eternal. Chapter 4: Havens of Sin and Freedom, Port Royal and Tortuga. When the storms grew cruel and the chase too long, pirates sought the safety of land, but not the land of kings and governors. Their refuge lay in places the world had forgotten, islands where law came only with the tide, and mercy was measured by the weight of rum. Two names whispered through the centuries still carry the scent of smoke, sea, and sin: Port Royal and Tortuga. Tortuga, the island of the lost. It began as a mistake. In 1629, a small group of French settlers landed on an island off the northern coast of Hispaniola. They named it Tortuga, the turtle for its curved shape. It was wild, thick with forest, and surrounded by reefs sharp as knives. No empire wanted it. No priest had blessed it. That was exactly why it became home. Hunters, deserters, escaped slaves, and sailors found their way there, each carrying nothing but a weapon and a grudge. At first, they hunted cattle on Hispaniola and smoked the meat, the boucan, that gave them their name. But soon, Tortuga's cliffs became more than a hideout. They became the beating heart of buccaneer life. Ships of every kind anchored in its bays: French barks, English sloops, Dutch snows. Flags changed with the wind, and alliances lasted only as long as the next raid. The air was thick with the smell of tar, sweat, and roasted meat. At night, the island burned with torchlight and drunken song. There were no kings here, no churches with bells. Only men who had fled the world's order to build one of their own. In Tortuga's taverns, sailors bargained for everything: a place on a crew, a share of a plunder, a bottle of rum, a woman's affection, or a simple moment of peace. The coin was always uncertain. Sometimes gold, sometimes blood. Governors tried to claim it, France sent one, then England, then Spain tried to take it by force. Each empire built a fort, raised a flag, and declared ownership. Each time the pirates laughed and burned it down. By the mid-1600s, Tortuga had become more than a hideout. It was an experiment in chaos. Its Brotherhood of the Coast held their own council, swearing oaths of mutual aid and equality. They shared everything: meat, powder, plunder, even punishment. If a man broke his word, he faced a trial. Not by judge, but by his crew. Justice came fast, like the sea itself. Many who arrived on Tortuga sought gold, but others sought something stranger: belonging. In the eyes of the world, they were criminals. On Tortuga, they were simply men. By 1670, the island had fallen into legend. It was said that from its shores one could see 100 ships at anchor, their masts black against the sun. The sound of hammers never stopped, patching sails, repairing hulls, forging new destinies. And at night, when the torches burned low, the sea itself seemed to glow, as if echoing the fire in those restless hearts. But paradise, even a lawless one, cannot last. When the great powers of Europe made peace, Tortuga's usefulness faded. France took it over for good, the pirates scattered, and the songs died away. Yet even now, when the wind rushes through its cliffs, locals say you can still hear the faint creak of phantom ships just beyond the horizon. Port Royal, the wickedest city on earth. If Tortuga was the cradle, then Port Royal was the empire. Nestled at the mouth of Jamaica's Kingston Harbour, Port Royal rose from coral sand into the richest and most notorious port in the New World. By 1655, the English had seized Jamaica from the Spanish and declared the port open for private enterprise. That meant one thing: pirates were welcome. Within a few years, it became a city of noise and excess. Gold, silver, rum and flesh changed hands faster than the tides. Taverns lined the waterfront, more than 200 by some accounts. And every night they overflowed with laughter and sin. Here the Buccaneers came to spend what they had stolen. Here merchants who cursed them by day sold them wine by night. Here the governor himself, a man named Sir Thomas Modiford, looked the other way so long as a share of every raid reached the colonial treasury. Ships from Tortuga, Barbados, and even England crowded its docks. Fort Charles guarded the bay, its cannons silent, but its taverns loud. It was said that in Port Royal a man could buy anything, love, death, or absolution, if he had the coin. Henry Morgan walked these streets before he became a legend. He planned his greatest raids in Port Royal's smoky rooms, raising his glass to men who would never live to see another dawn. His fleet sailed from here to burn Panama. His fortune returned here to buy rum, velvet, and silence. By the 1670s, Port Royal had become so wealthy that it glittered even at night. Lanterns reflected in the calm harbour like a second sky. But wealth has its own tide, and every tide must turn. On the morning of June 7, 1692, as the city awoke to another day of trade and pleasure, the earth began to move. A great earthquake struck, tearing the ground apart. Buildings collapsed into the sea. The harbour swallowed ships whole. In less than 2 minutes, 2/3 of the city sank beneath the waves. Thousands died, their bodies buried in sand and coral. The survivors said it was God's punishment, that the sea had come to claim what was always its own. Today, divers still find the streets of old Port Royal under the water. Taverns with bottles still on their shelves, coins scattered like frozen raindrops across the ocean floor. It is called the underwater Pompeii of the Caribbean. Perhaps that is fitting, for Port Royal, like Pompeii, was a place where men lived as if tomorrow would never come. And then it didn't. Both Tortuga and Port Royal were more than pirate havens. They were mirrors, reflections of the world's hunger for power, stripped of its polite disguise. They showed that the same men who called pirates monsters would drink their rum, take their gold, and beg their protection when convenient. Freedom and corruption shared the same table there. Sin and justice laughter and death, all danced to the same rhythm, the rhythm of the tide.
Now, centuries later, the waves wash gently over both shores.
Tourists walk where cutthroats once fought, children play where cannonballs fell, and the sea, as always, keeps the final word. Some nights, when the moon is bright over Jamaica's bay, fishermen say they see faint lights beneath the water, a drowned city still glowing, its ghosts drinking in silence, waiting for the tide to turn again. Chapter 5. The men behind the myths, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and the two women who sailed beside him. When people speak of pirates, their minds fill with smoke and thunder, black flags and blazing cannons, a man with wild eyes and a beard like night. That man was Edward Teach, though the world remembers him by another name, Blackbeard. He was not born a legend. He was born in Bristol, England, sometime around 1680, to a family that history forgot. He went to sea young, as so many restless souls did, and learned the trade of war under England's flag during the War of the Spanish Succession. But when the war ended, peace once again abandoned the sailors who had fought it. There were no wages, no work, only hunger, and the men who had mastered the art of violence turned it upon the very world that had used them. Edward Teach was among them. He joined the crew of Benjamin Hornigold, a pirate captain who prowled the waters near the Bahamas. Hornigold saw promise in the tall, quiet Englishman, a man who could command not just with fear, but with presence. When Hornigold retired, Teach took his ship and his flag, and the Caribbean gained a nightmare. He called his vessel the Queen Anne's Revenge. It carried 40 guns, black sails, and a crew of 300 men who feared no death, but it was Teach himself who made the ship truly terrifying. He braided his long black beard and tied it with ribbons. Before battle, he stuck slow-burning fuses under his hat so that smoke and sparks curled around his face, making him appear like a demon risen from the deep. He carried 6 pistols across his chest and swung a sword that never dulled. When he approached a ship, even before the first cannon fired, the crew often surrendered. Because how can you fight a ghost? Yet, beneath the terror, there was calculation. Blackbeard rarely killed without reason. He understood the art of fear, that a reputation could conquer faster than a cannon. He preferred surrender to slaughter, ransom to ruin. And so he became both myth and merchant, dealing in terror like others dealt in spices. For years he haunted the American coast, the Carolinas, the Virginias, the Straits of Florida. In 1718, he blockaded the port of Charleston for an entire week, holding a whole city hostage. He demanded medicine for his sick crew. The governor complied. No gold, no treasure, only medicine. That was Blackbeard's genius. He played the villain so convincingly that he no longer needed to kill, but the world cannot tolerate a man it cannot control. In November 1718, the governor of Virginia sent Lieutenant Robert Maynard to hunt him down. They met near Ocracoke Island. The battle was brief, brutal, and final. When it ended, Blackbeard stood on deck, bleeding from 25 wounds, his body refusing to fall. When he finally did, Maynard severed his head and hung it from his ship's bowsprit as a warning. The headless body, they say, swam around the ship 3 times before sinking. The sea remembers him still, not as a man of mercy or cruelty, but as a man who dared to live by his own legend and paid the price for it. But not all pirates ruled through terror. Some ruled through charm. Among them was a man named John Rackham, though the world called him Calico Jack, for the bright, patterned clothes he wore. He was no grand strategist, no fearsome warrior.
He was a dreamer with a sword and a smile, and perhaps that made him the most dangerous kind of pirate of all.
He began as quartermaster under the infamous Charles Vane, but when Vane's cowardice led him to flee battle, Rackham led a mutiny and took command. He was barely 30, yet the sea seemed to bend to his will. Calico. Jack's ship, the Revenge, was small and swift, perfect for surprise attacks and fast getaways. He preferred to strike at night when the moon hung low and the sound of oars could vanish into the waves. He did not seek great fortunes, he sought freedom, and he surrounded himself with those who desired the same. Among them were 2 women who would change pirate history forever: Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Anne Bonny was born in Ireland, the daughter of a lawyer and his maid. Disguised as a boy for much of her childhood, she grew wild and fierce, more flame than flesh. When her father disowned her for marrying a poor sailor, she fled to the Caribbean, where she found something rarer than gold, a man who saw her not as a woman, but as an equal. That man was Calico Jack. They became inseparable, lovers, partners, outlaws. Anne dressed as a man aboard ship, fought beside her crew, and was said to have a temper that could outmatch any storm.
She was a hurricane, one survivor recalled, and her eyes could cut.
Then came Mary Read. Her story was stranger still. Born in England, raised as a boy to claim an inheritance not hers, she spent her youth disguised as a soldier, then as a sailor. When her ship was captured by Calico Jack's crew, she revealed her secret to Anne, and a bond was forged between the two that even history could not untangle. They fought together, blade and pistol in hand, their hair tied back, their hearts untamed. Witnesses later swore that in battle, when the men faltered, it was the 2 women who stood their ground, cursing the cowards and firing till their pistols smoked. Their story was as brief as it was brilliant. In October 1720, their ship was cornered by a British sloop near Jamaica. The crew, drunk on rum, refused to fight. Only Anne, Mary, and a few others stood at the rails, screaming defiance into the night. They fought until the deck ran slick with rain and blood. But courage could not outmatch numbers. They were captured and brought to trial in Port Royal. Calico. Jack was sentenced to hang. Before his execution, he asked to see Anne one last time. She looked at him through the bars and said, "If you had fought like a man, you need not have been hanged like a dog."
Her words cut deeper than any sword.
Anne and Mary both pleaded their bellies. They were pregnant, and thus spared immediate death. Mary died in prison, likely of fever. Anne's fate is unknown. Some say her father ransomed her. Others say she escaped, changed her name, and lived quietly, her legend fading into the whisper of palm leaves. But even if her body vanished, her spirit did not. It lingers in every tale of rebellion, every storm that breaks against Jamaica's shore. Calico Jack's flag, the skull above crossed swords, became the symbol of piracy itself. It was not the flag of conquest, but of defiance. A reminder that even in a world ruled by kings, there were still those who would rather die free than live obedient. These were the faces of the golden age of piracy. Not monsters, not saints, but mirrors of the sea itself.
Wild, unpredictable, and impossible to tame.
Each carried a piece of the same truth: that freedom is never gentle, and that those who chase it must pay in full. Now, centuries later, their stories drift like fog over the Caribbean. When the moon rises over Nassau, when thunder rolls over the straits of Florida, you can almost see their silhouettes. Blackbeard's shadow among the smoke, Calico Jack's flag fluttering faintly in the night, and two women standing side by side, daring the world to remember them. They are gone, yes, but legends do not sleep. They wait, patient as the tide, for someone, somewhere, to listen again. Chapter 6. Life at Sea, the Brotherhood, the Code, and the Cost of Freedom. Life aboard a pirate ship was not the wild chaos that stories later made it seem. It was its own small world, brutal, fragile, and strangely fair. At dawn, the sea was silver. The men stirred awake in hammocks that swayed with the tide. The air smelled of salt and sweat, of tar and stale rum. Some rose to scrub the deck, others to mend sails or clean pistols. There was no captain barking orders from above, only the rhythm of work born of habit and need. Here, on these decks, freedom had rules. The Articles. Before every voyage, the crew gathered on deck to sign a document called the Articles. Each captain had his own version, written in rough ink on parchment or even scraps of sailcloth. It was their constitution, their law, their fragile peace among wolves. The Articles dictated everything: how the loot would be divided, how injuries would be compensated, and how disputes would be settled. No prey, no pay, they said, meaning no man earned a coin unless the ship earned its plunder. Every crew member had a vote. They chose their captain and could remove him if he lost their trust. Even punishment was decided collectively. In a world ruled by kings and emperors, this floating democracy was an act of rebellion, a whisper of equality in an age built on chains. Under these laws, courage was valued more than birth. A runaway slave could stand beside a nobleman's son as an equal, and on the open sea, they shared not only danger, but dignity. There were black pirates, native islanders, and freed Africans, men who found on deck what no kingdom would give them on land: a voice. It was not kindness that made pirates equal. It was survival. A ship could not sail if its men hated one another, and so necessity built what justice had forgotten. The captain and the quartermaster. Contrary to myth, the captain of a pirate ship was not a tyrant.
He was a leader by consent, a man trusted to fight and command when the cannons roared.
But when the battle ended, power passed to another, the quartermaster. The quartermaster represented the crew, oversaw discipline, and divided the plunder. If the captain was fire, the quartermaster was balance. Together they held the fragile center of the pirates' universe. And that universe was smaller than one might think. A world measured in creaking planks and endless horizon, in hunger and laughter and silence. The loot, After a raid, the spoils were brought to deck: barrels of rum, bolts of silk, chests of silver coins.
They glittered in the sun like fallen stars.
But before any man took his share, the wounded were compensated first. A lost arm earned 600 pieces of 8, a lost leg 800. A missing eye 100. The man who lost his life left his share to his family, if he had one. What remained was divided. The captain took 2 shares, the quartermaster 1.5, the rest 1 each. No priest, no noble, no master. Only men dividing what they had risked everything for. It was not perfect, but it was theirs. The silence between battles. Between raids, life at sea was a slow rhythm of waiting. Days melted together under the burning sun. Men patched sails, sharpened blades, sang songs to chase away the silence. They gambled, told lies, carved figures into the wood, and dreamed of land, even as they feared it. The ocean could be kind one morning and murderous by evening. Storms came without warning, tearing masts and men alike. When a ship went down, there was no grave, only water. Many pirates could not swim. They believed the sea, which gave them everything, would not take them gently. Still they laughed in the face of it, not because they were fearless, but because they had long accepted that fear was useless. Some nights the deck fell silent. Only the sound of ropes creaking, waves sighing against wood. The stars above were sharp and bright, cold witnesses to men who lived as though time itself could be stolen. In those moments, the pirates were not monsters, not rebels, just souls adrift, searching for something they could never name. The Brotherhood. Despite their violence, there was brotherhood. When one man fell, another took his place at the cannon. When fever struck, they shared their last drops of fresh water. When a shipmate died, his hammock became his shroud, sewn shut with a final coin in his mouth for the sea to claim. They drank together, fought together, and when quarrels turned deadly, they faced the punishment they had agreed upon themselves, sometimes a whipping, sometimes marooning. Marooning was the worst fate of all. To be left on a deserted island with nothing but a pistol and a bottle of water. Some survived for days, others carved their names into driftwood before the sea took them. Yet even in that exile there was a strange poetry, a man alone with the ocean that had been both his home and his executioner. The cost of freedom. Freedom was the pirates' greatest treasure, but also their curse. It meant no nation, no protection, no forgiveness. Every harbor could turn against them. Every flag could become their doom. When captured, there was no mercy. They were chained, marched through the streets, and hanged at the gallows. In some ports, their bodies were left to rot as warnings, silhouettes against the sky, creaking with every wind. Still they went on. For them, death on the gallows was no worse than death in chains. At least they had chosen it. One English writer once called pirates villains without virtue. But perhaps virtue is a luxury for men who have never been desperate. For those who had nothing, no home, no justice, no place in the world, the deck of a pirate ship was the closest thing to equality they would ever know. And so they lived as though each sunrise might be their last, and each wave a prayer. They were not seeking immortality, they were seeking now The sharp taste of rum, the crash of a broadside, the laughter that came before the silence. Every heartbeat stolen from fate was a victory. The ocean gave them freedom, and in return, it asked everything. When night fell and the ship drifted in the dark, the men would lie awake, listening to the creak of timbers and the whisper of waves against the hull. The sea spoke to them then, not in words, but in rhythm. And some swore they could hear the voices of those they had buried beneath its surface, calling softly from below. For the Brotherhood of Pirates never truly ended. It only sank, and in the deep blue silence it still waits, patient, timeless, eternal. Chapter 7. The Art of the Hunt. Tactics, Storms, and the Theatre of Battle. Every pirate knew that the sea was a stage, and battle was its cruelest play. The audience was the wind. The script, chaos. And every man aboard a pirate ship was both actor and spectator to his own fate. The hunt began long before a cannon ever fired. It began in silence. Far off the horizon, a lookout's voice would pierce the calm. "Sail ho!" Instantly, the deck came alive. The crew rushed to the rails, squinting at the faint white triangle of a distant sail, a glimmer against the blue.
Was it a merchant ship?
A navy frigate? Treasure or death? The captain lifted his spyglass, steady against the wind. One glance could decide everything. If the ship's sails were square and its hull deep, a galleon, heavy with cargo. If its flag bore red or blue, a warship, best left alone. If it moved sluggishly under the trade winds, its crew unsuspecting, it was prey. The pirates lowered their flags, disguising themselves as harmless traders. They drifted closer, inch by inch, sails trimmed to match the wind. The helmsman whispered to the sea itself, coaxing the ship to move quietly. Even the waves seemed to hush, as if they too awaited the moment. Then, a shout.
A cannon.
A flag raised black.
The deception fell away like a mask. A black banner painted with a skull or hourglass unfurled against the wind. The message was simple and ancient. No mercy if you resist. The first broadside was rarely meant to kill. It was meant to terrify.
A shot across the bow, a splintering of wood, the sound echoing like thunder over water.
Merchants knew what it meant.
Many surrendered at once, dropping sails, raising their hands in silent prayer. But not all. Some captains, proud or desperate, chose to fight. Then came the storm. The deck became a blur of smoke, flame and screams. Cannonballs tore through masts, iron chains ripped through sails, splinters flew like arrows. The air filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder and salt, and through it all, the pirates moved with terrifying precision, not soldiers in formation, but predators in rhythm. They knew their ships like their own hands. They could feel the tension of rope, the shift of the wind, the roll of the hull beneath their feet. Each man had a place, the gunners below deck, loading and firing in darkness, the boarders sharpening cutlasses, ready to leap across. To board another ship was to cross a thin line between life and legend. The pirates swung over on ropes or ran across planks, pistols smoking, blades flashing in the sunlight. Steel met steel, shouts mingled with prayers. And when the fight ended, it ended quickly. One side victorious, the other swallowed by silence. Victory brought not joy, but exhaustion. The men stood among wreckage, blood mixing with seawater, faces blackened with smoke. They took what they could, gold, rum, powder, food, and left the rest to the waves.
Sometimes they spared prisoners, sometimes the sea claimed them all.
Yet even in their cruelty there was a strange respect among sailors. A captured man who fought bravely might be offered a place on the crew. Many accepted. The line between pirate and victim was thin, and often it disappeared with a single choice. The weather as weapon. No admiral could match the pirate's greatest ally, the sea itself. They learned to read its moods the way a hunter reads the forest. A faint change in the air, a shift in the color of the horizon. These were omens. When a storm gathered, pirates did not always flee. Sometimes they used it. A merchant convoy caught in a squall was helpless, scattered across miles of wild water. A pirate ship, smaller and faster, could vanish behind sheets of rain, then strike from nowhere. Lightning became camouflage. Thunder drowned the sound of oars. But the same storms that gave them cover could also destroy them. A single wrong tack, and the wind would tear the mast like a twig. Men clung to ropes, their bodies lashed by rain sharp as glass. And when the sea rose in walls higher than masts, courage meant nothing. No one prayed louder than a pirate in a hurricane. Some ships disappeared without a trace. Others washed ashore months later, skeletons still lashed to the wheel, faces turned toward an empty horizon. The sea gave no answers, only stories. The dance of deception. Not every victory came from strength.
Pirates were masters of deceit.
They sailed under false colors, the Spanish flag, the Dutch, even the Union Jack, until the last moment. They built false decks to hide men and cannons. They set lanterns at night to mimic the positions of friendly fleets, luring victims closer. One trick was called the false surrender. A pirate ship, appearing crippled and broken, would drift aimlessly, sails torn, smoke rising from its deck. When an enemy approached to finish the job, the pirates would spring to life, cannons loaded, pistols drawn, ropes ready. In seconds, the hunter became the hunted. The sea rewarded cunning more than bravery. The clever survived. The proud sank. The price of the hunt. For all their victories, every pirate knew the sea would take back its debt. The salt ate away at wood and flesh alike. Gunpowder blinded, cannon recoil shattered bones. And when the wind died, the ocean became a mirror, silent, merciless, endless. Weeks could pass without sight of land. The sun burned, water ran low, tempers flared. Men fought not over gold, but over a sip of rum or a shadow of shade. To live by the sword was to live in hunger, not for food, but for the next fight, the next storm, the next chance to feel alive. Because for a pirate, peace was worse than death. In peace, there was nothing to chase, no wind, no prey, no meaning, and so they hunted again and again until their names disappeared beneath the foam. When night fell after battle, the sea was quiet once more. The survivors patched holes, whispered to the dead, and stared into the black water. Sometimes they threw the bodies overboard wrapped in sailcloth. Other times they simply let them drift. One last voyage beneath the stars.
Above them, the sky glowed faintly red from the setting sun.
The waves reflected it like blood, and somewhere in that fading light, the pirates saw themselves, not heroes, not villains, but fleeting sparks on the face of eternity.
The hunt always ended the same way, with silence.
The ocean smoothed itself, erasing every trace of violence, as though forgiving nothing, but forgetting everything. Tomorrow the wind would rise again, and with it, the hunt would begin anew. Chapter 8: Symbols and Shadows, the Culture, Flags, and Myths of the Pirate World. Every world invents its own religion, its own language, its own myths.
For the pirates of the Caribbean, that religion was freedom, that language was fear, and those myths were immortality. They lived on the edge of death, and so they built symbols strong enough to outlive it.
The Black Flag. The Black Flag was more than cloth. It was a message, a promise, and sometimes a mercy. In the beginning, pirates flew red, the Joli Rouge meaning the pretty red. It told the world there would be no quarter, no surrender, no survival. But soon, black replaced red, and the meaning shifted. Black was the color of death delayed. It said, "Surrender now, and you may live. Resist, and you will not." Each captain had his own design, painted crudely with white pigment, bone dust or chalk, a skull grinning above crossed swords, an hourglass reminding all that time was running out, a bleeding heart pierced by an arrow,
a skeleton raising a cup to death.
Every flag told a story, of the man who flew it, of the fate that followed. Blackbeard's banner showed a horned skeleton holding an hourglass and a spear aimed at a red heart. Calico Jacks bore the skull and crossed cutlasses, now the universal sign of piracy. Bartholomew Roberts, elegant and vain, had one that showed himself raising a toast to death. They were warnings written in wind. And when a black flag rose against the sky, every sailor in the Caribbean understood what it meant. It meant that death was near, and mercy was not guaranteed.
The markings of men.
Symbols were not confined to cloth. They were carved into skin. Many pirates bore tattoos long before they became common among sailors. Anchors, daggers, serpents, and crosses adorned their arms. Talismans against bad luck, reminders of faith lost or found. Some marked the names of lovers or ships that had sunk. Others bore scars that told longer stories than ink ever could. A missing finger meant punishment survived. A burned hand, gunpowder misfire, a curved scar from ear to jaw, the memory of mutiny. Each mark was both confession and badge.
A map of the soul drawn in blood and salt.
They also adorned their ships. Figureheads, women carved from oak, angels, demons, mermaids, crowned skeletons, stood at the bow like guardians. They were not decoration. They were prayers. When a ship sailed into a storm, every man on board believed that wooden face at the front was watching over them, whispering to the sea, pleading for one more dawn. Music rum, and myth. Between storms and battles, pirates filled their nights with song, not the polished melodies of courts or churches, but rough hymns of survival. Their music was built from rhythm. Drum on barrel, boot on deck, hands clapping to keep the darkness away. Lyrics spoke of ships lost, women waiting, or graves marked only by tide. The songs kept madness at bay. They drank rum not to forget, but to remember differently, to blur the sharp edge of truth until it tasted like something they could endure. They told tales that grew taller with each retelling. One spoke of the ghost galleon, a ship seen only on moonless nights, crewed by men drowned long ago, its lanterns glowing faintly beneath the waves. Another told of a chest buried so deep in an island cave that even the earth itself refused to give it back. And there was the oldest story of all, the Flying Dutchman, the cursed ship doomed to sail forever, its captain unable to die. Every pirate claimed not to believe in ghosts, yet none sailed easily past a patch of still water or an empty bottle drifting alone. For men who lived between sin and salvation, the line between myth and memory blurred easily. They feared God, perhaps, but they feared the sea more. The code beneath the chaos, beneath the drunken songs and fierce symbols, there lay a strange philosophy. Pirates did not write books, but their lives were arguments against kings, against class, against the notion that order must mean obedience. They lived by codes that punished theft within the crew, but allowed it against the world. They believed in justice, but not in law. They believed in equality, but not peace. And perhaps they believed that death was the only honest judge. The Brotherhood of the Coast became almost mythic in itself, a name whispered to describe the loose fraternity of pirates across the Caribbean who treated one another as kin, even if they had never met. They were said to have secret signals, hidden harbors, and an oath sworn not to nations, but to the sea itself. In truth, it was less organization than understanding. Every pirate knew the unspoken rule: the enemy of your enemy is your brother, until the gold is divided.
And yet, when the noose tightened around them in the 1720s, many pirates chose to die rather than betray another.
They faced the gallows laughing, hats tipped to the crowd. Some sang as the rope tightened. They believed, perhaps truly, that the sea would remember them. The myth that outlived the men. The golden age of piracy ended, but the myth never sank. It drifted through tavern songs, sailors' tales, and centuries of retelling. The villains became heroes, the crimes became adventures, the gallows became glory, writers turned them into rebels of the heart, poets of the ocean, painters gave them color, filmmakers gave them faces, and the world, perhaps longing for a piece of that forbidden freedom, gave them immortality. Yet the truth, like the tide, still whispers beneath the surface. For all the flags and laughter, for all the stories of buried treasure and wild seas, piracy was not romance.
It was hunger. It was desperation shaped into defiance.
It was men and women standing at the edge of the world and saying, "No more." And maybe that is why their symbols endure. Because every age has its tyrants, and every soul at some point dreams of a flag that means freedom, no matter the cost. Now, centuries later, those symbols remain, printed on shirts, painted on walls, carved into skin. They've lost their danger, but not their allure. The skull still smiles. The hourglass still runs out. And somewhere in the restless deep, the sea still waits for another ship bold enough to raise a black flag against the wind. Chapter 9. The Fall of the Golden Age. Empires Strike Back. Every legend burns brightest before it fades. By the early 1700s, the Caribbean burned like a torch, and every empire watched the flame with both fascination and fear. The pirates had become too many, too bold. They no longer hid in coves or crept through storms. They sailed in fleets, their black flags visible for miles. They raided Spanish galleons, French merchants, even English ships, forgetting who had once armed them. In their hunger for freedom, they had bitten every hand that fed them. And now, those hands reached for the sword. The turning tide. The war that had given birth to piracy, the War of the Spanish Succession, ended in 1713 with the Treaty of Utrecht. The nations that had once unleashed privateers to do their bidding suddenly called them criminals. Letters of marque, once royal permission to plunder, became death warrants overnight. Many privateers refused to stop.
They had spent a decade at sea living by the gun and the gamble. What were they to do? Return to poverty? To obedience?
So they kept sailing. They called themselves free men, but the empires now called them outlaws. By 1715, the Caribbean was crawling with them. Ex-soldiers, deserters, former slaves, and dreamers from every nation. They built a new home in the Bahamas, on an island called New Providence. Its harbour at Nassau was shallow enough to protect against warships, yet deep enough for fast pirate sloops. Here, for a few short years, freedom had an address. They called it the Republic of Pirates.
The flag of no nation flew there.
Ships from every corner of the sea anchored side by side. Markets sold stolen goods openly. Taverns echoed with laughter, and men who had once fought under rival flags drank from the same bottle. The governor's mansion was abandoned, the church silent, but the harbour alive, a defiant pulse against the order of the world. Among them were names already carved into legend: Blackbeard, Charles Vane, Calico Jack Rackham, Benjamin Hornigold, and Samuel Bellamy. Men whose very existence mocked the authority of crowns. For a moment, it seemed the age of empires had met its match, not in armies, but in outcasts. But freedom, like wind, cannot be contained. It shifts and it fades. The Empire's revenge. In London, word of the pirate republic spread like a sickness. Merchants demanded protection. Governors begged for troops. The Crown, embarrassed by its own creation, decided to purge the seas once and for all. In 1718, King George I sent Woodes Rogers, a former privateer, to Nassau with a simple message: pardon or the gallows. Rogers was no fool.
He knew that men who had lived without law would not yield easily.
So he brought both mercy and might. He offered a royal pardon to any pirate who surrendered within 1 year. Those who refused would be hunted to the ends of the sea. Some took the offer. Hornigold laid down his arms. So did dozens of weary men who longed for rest. But others laughed in his face. Blackbeard returned to the Carolinas, carving his legend into smoke and thunder. Charles Vane spat at the pardon and fled into the storm. The age of forgiveness had ended before it began. Rogers's fleet burned the ships that refused to yield, executed the captains who were caught, and turned Nassau from a republic of pirates into a naval fortress. Freedom was replaced by flags once more. By 1720, the sea that had once been alive with laughter grew quiet. The black flags that had once filled the horizon vanished one by one. The last battles. The great names fell like stars into darkness. Blackbeard died off the coast of Ocracoke in 1718, his body riddled with bullets, his head hung from the bow of his killer's ship. Charles Vane was captured in Jamaica and hanged in 1721, his body left to rot in chains. Calico Jack met the same fate alongside the end of his crew and the two women who survived him. Bartholomew Roberts, called the Gentleman Pirate, fought his last battle in 1722 against the British Navy. He was shot through the throat, dying instantly, his body thrown to the sea before he could be captured. When Roberts fell, the golden age of piracy fell with him. Without leaders, the remnant scattered. Some fled to Africa, others to the Indian Ocean. But the Caribbean, once the empire of the outlaws, fell silent. The ports that had once sheltered them turned them away. The taverns grew empty, the hangman's rope grew busy. In London, they celebrated. In Havana and Port Royal, they built gallows tall enough to be seen from the sea. And as each pirate swung in the wind, their corpses became grim signposts of empire's victory. The message was clear: the age of rebellion was over. The quiet after the storm. Yet victory is never clean. The same governments that had hunted pirates soon filled their place with corporations, merchants, and navies that ruled the waves in another way. Trade flourished, but so did slavery. Gold flowed again, but into fewer hands. The sea was safe and silent. For those who survived, the silence was unbearable. A few accepted pardons and became fishermen or dockhands,
but most could not bear the weight of stillness.
They faded into rumour, into legend, into ghost stories told in taverns. Some said they saw a lone ship drifting off the coast of Tortuga, its sails tattered, its deck empty, yet lanterns burning softly in the dark. Others claimed to hear laughter over the water on windless nights. Maybe it was just memory. Maybe it was something more.
Because legends do not die when men do.
They only change shape. The sea forgets everything, but it also remembers in ways no book can. In every wave that breaks, there is an echo of a cannon. In every gust of wind, the faint whisper of a name. Blackbeard, Vane, Anne, Mary, all gone, yet not gone. Their shadows move beneath the blue, unbound by ropes or kingdoms. And though the age of piracy ended in blood and chains, the idea it carried, that a man could live unruled, still drifts upon the tide. Epilogue to an era. By 1730, the seas were quiet. Trade routes ran smooth, navies patrolled every strait. The Caribbean once more belonged to kings and merchants, but freedom, once tasted, never fully leaves the tongue. In every tavern where rum still burns the throat, someone eventually raises a glass to the old days. And for a heartbeat, the room smells of salt and smoke again.
For a moment, you can almost hear the creak of masts and the distant echo of a flag unfurling. The golden age of piracy was over.
But its ghost lingered, a soft, laughing presence at the edge of history, whispering that there are still places where no map reaches and no crown rules. And the sea, patient as always, waited for another storm. Chapter 10. Echoes in the Modern World. How the pirates became legends. The sea forgets, but stories do not. Long after the last pirate swung from the gallows, their shadows lingered, drifting across generations like mist over calm water. Empires fell, ships changed shape, but the dream of the sea, wild, ungoverned, infinite, survived in the hearts of those who still longed to escape the world's walls. And so, the pirates returned. Not in flesh, but in legend. The rebirth of the pirate in story. In 1724, just 2 years after Bartholomew Roberts died, an anonymous book appeared in London. It was called A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates. Its author, perhaps a man named Captain Charles Johnson, though some whisper it was Daniel Defoe himself, gathered tales from trials, letters, and rumour. It turned criminals into characters, villains into visionaries. Readers devoured it.
For the first time, the public saw pirates not as beasts, but as men, brave, cunning, sometimes even noble.
The stories carried danger, but also something new: freedom. That book became the seed of a mythology. From it, 1,000 stories grew. In the 1800s, writers like Robert Louis Stevenson picked up the thread. Treasure Island gave us the parrot, the buried chest, the map marked with an X. Symbols that never truly existed in history, yet became truer than truth. Children dreamed of the open sea, not with fear, but with wonder. Long John Silver, with his charm and lies, became the face of a new kind of pirate. Not monster, not martyr, but man.
Later, cinema took the torch.
Douglas Fairbanks, Errol Flynn, Johnny Depp. Each generation found its own reflection of rebellion in those wind-tattered sails. The pirates on screen laughed louder, looked better, killed less.
They no longer robbed for survival, but for spirit.
They became what the world secretly wished to be: untamed, unafraid, and unbound. And though the real pirates had vanished into dust and tide, their ghosts smiled quietly at the irony. The world that had once hunted them now worshipped their image. The myth in the mind. What is it about a pirate that endures? Perhaps it is because we still live with chains, invisible ones made of duty, law, or the soft tyranny of comfort. The pirate reminds us of what lies beyond those walls. He lives without permission. He takes what he desires, not out of greed, but to prove that he still exists. In every age, there are those who hear the ocean calling, not the literal ocean, but the vastness, that space where rules dissolve and the soul meets itself. The pirate's ship, in that sense, is not wood and rope, but metaphor, the vessel of rebellion that sails through every human heart. To sail away is to dream of being untouchable, unreachable, and entirely one's own. That is why the black flag never truly fell. It flies now in quieter places, in art, in music, in the quiet decision to live differently. The forgotten truth. Yet the romantic vision hides the truth that once was. The sea was not kind. It was hunger and sickness and despair. Pirates were not poets. They were men desperate enough to gamble their lives on a single cannon's roar. They lived short and died violently, and few left anything behind but names carved into wood or whispered into storms. But maybe that's what makes their story beautiful, because even knowing all that, the dream still calls. To live fully knowing it will not last, that is the pirate's secret. To love the freedom that kills you, to laugh under a black flag, to raise a cup to death itself and drink deep. They were not saints, but they were honest in their defiance. They wanted everything the world denied them, and they took it, even if only for a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, they became eternal. The echo in modern seas. Today, the Caribbean is calm. Cruise ships glide over the same waters where cannon fire once echoed. Tourists sip cocktails above coral reefs that hold bones instead of treasure. The ports once stained by blood now sell postcards of the past. Yet beneath the laughter and light, the memory hums. Divers still find relics of the old world. Rusted cutlasses, shards of rum bottles, coins marked with strange sigils. In Nassau, the Museum of Piracy stands where pirates once stood trial. In Port Royal, the drowned streets sleep beneath clear blue water, lanterns from the 17th century still resting where they fell. And when night comes, the wind through the palm trees sounds eerily like the creak of ropes and rigging. The sea does not forget. It only waits. The eternal sea. Every generation needs its rebels, and every rebel eventually finds the sea.
Because the ocean is the last frontier that cannot be owned.
It belongs to no king, no creed, no currency.
It listens to everyone, forgives no one, and holds the stories of us all.
And somewhere out there, between Tortuga and the Florida Straits, between myth and memory, the ghosts of the old pirates sail still. Not as men, not as monsters, but as ideas. They ride the wind that whispers to every restless heart, there is more. More than land.
More than law. More than the life you were told to live.
If you stand at the shore some quiet evening and let your eyes drift to the horizon, you might feel it. That pull in your chest, that faint, impossible longing. It is not for gold, it is not for power.
It is for the taste of salt and the sound of freedom.
That, in the end, is the true treasure of the Caribbean. Not the coins that sank with the ships, but the spirit that rose with the tide. And so the story goes on, carried in waves, told in whispers, sung in sleep. The world changes, but the ocean remains. And in that endless rhythm, in that soft, eternal breathing of the sea, the pirates live forever. Caribbean Nights, the sleep story of pirates and lost souls. The tale has ended, but the sea is still awake. Close your eyes. The wind outside your window is the same one that filled their sails. And somewhere, in the distance, you might still hear it. The faint laughter of men who refused to kneel. Chapter 11. The Lost Souls Beneath the Waves. Beneath the turquoise shimmer of the Caribbean lies another world. A quiet kingdom made not of coral or pearls, but of memory. Down there, among the slow sway of seagrass and drifting sand, rest the bones of the men who chased freedom too far. They do not haunt with malice. They drift softly, like dreams that never found an ending. The Drowned Armada. There are ships still down there, whole cities of wood and iron asleep beneath the tide. Some rest upright, their masts now forests of coral, their cannons coated in moss. Others lie broken, ribs of oak exposed to the current like the skeleton of a long-dead whale. Divers say the water near them feels colder. Not frightening, only solemn, like stepping into a church that has forgotten its prayers. Coins glimmer among the stones. Buttons from uniforms, a child's comb, a rosary once clutched in fear. Every object tells a story no one remembers fully, yet the sea remembers them all. The Spanish galleons that sank carrying silver from the New World, their ghosts still gleam faintly when sunlight filters through. And, deeper still, where light dies rest the pirate sloops that tried to outrun the storm and failed. Their names lost, their crews unnamed, their dreams preserved in salt. Sometimes fishermen's nets pull up more than fish, a shard of pottery, a human tooth, a rusted pistol. They say the sea returns these things only when it wishes to be remembered. The weight of silence. The ocean floor is not empty. It hums, not with sound, but with presence.
Those who have dived deep enough speak of moments when everything stops. No bubbles, no breath, no motion. And an ancient stillness presses against the skin.
It feels as if the water itself is watching. If you listen, truly listen, you might hear the faintest echo of life long gone, the distant thud of hammers repairing hulls, the creak of rope, the whisper of a captain's voice calling orders no one can obey anymore. And sometimes, though no one dares to say it aloud, a laugh.
Not cruel,
just weary. The kind of laugh that knows the end has already come. The ghost ship. There are stories of a ship that still sails these waters. It appears on moonless nights when the horizon disappears and sea and sky become one. A black hull gliding silently, lanterns burning with pale blue fire. No sound of oars, no wake behind it. Sailors call it El Silencio.
the silence.
They say it carries the souls of pirates who died at sea, doomed to sail forever because they were buried without blessing, without land beneath their feet. Some claim it follows real ships for hours, matching their speed, just beyond sight, as if curious about the living. When dawn breaks, it fades, leaving only a scent of salt sharper than usual and the faint outline of footprints on a clean deck. The old men in coastal taverns swear it's not a curse, but a reminder. The sea, they say, does not keep the wicked, only the restless. And restlessness is a kind of eternity. The lovers of the deep. In the southern waters near Cartagena, divers once found two skeletons locked in an embrace. Their bones had fused together, coral growing through them like veins of time. No one knows who they were, lovers perhaps who leapt together when their ship went down, or two shipmates clinging to each other as the waves closed over their heads. The scientists catalogued them,
The poets named them.
the sea kept them, and when the moonlight filters through the shallow water, it glints off their ribs like silver. Even death, it seems, could not separate them. The church beneath the sea. Off the coast of Jamaica lies the sunken half of old Port Royal. Streets, walls, taverns, all still there, preserved under sand and coral since that day in 1692 when the earth opened and swallowed the city whole. Divers swim past the stone archways of old churches, past doorways where bottles still sit untouched. Inside one building they found a clock stopped forever at 11:43, the exact moment the earthquake struck. Time, quite literally, drowned. Some say the bells of that church still ring faintly when storms roll across the bay, a deep, muffled sound rising from the sea floor, tolling for the souls who never escaped. No one can prove it, but then no one tries to. Some mysteries are meant to be left alone. The calm below. Beneath all the stories, all the ghosts, there is peace. An eternal calm the living cannot understand. The ocean covers everything: violence, greed, love, courage, with one slow, forgiving gesture. It erases pain but not meaning. It softens every sharp edge until even tragedy becomes beautiful. The pirates who fought and died for freedom now sleep side by side with the sailors they once hunted. No flags, no sides, no vengeance. Only stillness. Their ships are gardens now.
Coral grows over cannons.
Fish weave through windows where once maps and compasses lay. The sea, indifferent and divine, has turned their rebellion into reef, a cathedral made of bone and time. If you were to dive deep enough, past where the sunlight ends and the water grows green and endless, you might see them. Not as ghosts, but as shapes in the dark, drifting gently with the current, their hands still reaching for the horizon. And you would know somehow that they are not lost. They have simply gone where the wind cannot follow. The whisper of return. The surface shimmers far above, a wavering mirror between two worlds. And if you rise slowly, if you listen as you ascend, you might hear the faintest sound carried through the water. It isn't a song, not really.
It's a rhythm.
A heartbeat, the same rhythm that filled the decks centuries ago, of waves against wood, of life refusing to be silenced. When you break the surface, the world feels smaller, quieter. But if you look to the horizon, you might see it, the suggestion of a dark sail far away, moving without wind. A reminder that not all who sink are gone, some become part of the sea. And the sea, eternal and endless, never truly forgets its children. The pirates sought freedom and found it, not in life, but in the silence beneath the waves. They are the lost souls of the Caribbean, and they rest where the world ends and dreams begin. Chapter 12, The Sea Before Sleep, Closing the Circle. The night returns, not as darkness, but as peace. The waves breathe slow again, folding upon themselves like soft fabric. Above them, the stars shimmer faintly, a scatter of silver dust drifting over the endless blue. And somewhere, between the sky and the deep, the stories of all who came before drift quietly, finding their place in the stillness. The sea remembers everything, but it does not mourn. It carries both cruelty and kindness in equal measure. It erases without anger, forgives without words. Now it hums gently, like an old lullaby, one that has soothed the restless for centuries. the endless horizon. Look out over the horizon. It has no edge, no border. Just a soft curve where the world folds into sleep. Long ago, men stood at the same shore and dreamed of what lay beyond that line. Some chased gold, others glory. Some only silence. They built ships and carried their hearts into the unknown. Some returned. Most did not. But in the end, it didn't matter, because to sail, to try, was enough. Perhaps that's what the pirates understood before anyone else, that freedom was never a destination, but the act of drifting, of letting go. They were called outlaws, thieves, devils. Yet when the wind touched their faces, they were closer to truth than all the kings on land. For on the open sea, a man belongs to nothing, and nothing belongs to him. And in that emptiness lies peace. The quiet lanterns. Imagine now the ships long gone, their sails tattered, their decks empty.
Yet in the mind's eye you can still see them, ghostly outlines moving through mist.
A lantern sways at the bow, its light barely flickering. The wind hums softly through the ropes. And somewhere below, the ocean whispers old names. Anne, Mary, Edward, Jack. They are not gone. They are merely quiet. Their laughter has become the breeze.
Their voices, the hush of the tide.
Their rebellion, the rhythm of the sea itself. In that rhythm, they are infinite. The return of the tide. The tide, like time, always returns.
It reaches for the shore, touches it tenderly, and then pulls away. Never lost, never finished.
Each wave is both ending and beginning. Each breath, both farewell and promise.
And maybe, if you listen closely enough, you can hear the faint echo of that promise.
That nothing truly disappears, not the ships, not the souls, not even the dreams that once seemed swallowed by the deep. They are all still here, dissolved into the salt and wind, carried in the mist that kisses your skin. The lullaby of the deep. Close your eyes, the air tastes of salt.
The wind is cool against your face.
Far away, a ship's bell rings once, low, soft, and final. It does not mark an ending, but a reminder that the journey never truly stops. It only changes shape. You are standing now where they once stood, between land and sea, between the known and the infinite. And like them, you are small. And like them, you are part of something vast. The waves move towards you, gentle as sleep.
Each one smaller, quieter, softer than the last.
They do not want to wake you. They only wish to carry you, past fear, past time, into the stillness that waits beyond thought. The circle closes. From the hunters of Tortuga to the ghosts beneath the waves, from the black flags to the silent horizon, the circle is complete. The pirates sought freedom and found eternity. The sea sought silence and found song. And we, standing on this shore of story and sleep, find a little of both. Let the world fade now. Let the noise of land grow distant. Only the tide remains, patient, eternal, and kind. It calls not for battle, not for gold, but for rest. for peace. So rest. Breathe with the sea. Let it rock you the way it once rocked the ships that carried every dream ever dared. And as you drift into sleep, remember this:
that freedom, real freedom, is not to flee the world, but to forgive it.
The ocean has done this since time began, and tonight it does the same for you. The wind softens, the stars tremble like slow embers, and somewhere far away the ghosts of the Caribbean sail one last time, not to fight, but to watch over the sea they once loved too fiercely to leave behind. Their lanterns fade, one by one, until only moonlight remains. And the sea, vast and quiet, exhales. The story ends here. In stillness, in salt, in sleep. Good night.